Hello there, and welcome. Hello, everybody. How are we doing? Welcome to BiCrafty Bootcamp Crochet for Knitters, Lesson 11. We are going to dive in today and learn how to make a top-down crochet hat. At this point in all of the lessons, we have learned how to make granny squares, what else have we done? We have done like coaster things. I feel like I'm drawing a blank on all the things that we've done. We've made a lot of different things, but we have not made anything yet really that is to fit, right? So this is going to be our first foray into three-dimensional crochet. And the great thing about this is you can take the lessons we're going to learn today for making the top-down crochet hat, and you can use what we're learning into learning how to make amigurumi items, or learning how to transition and make things like crochet socks or other fitted items. So we're going to look at a crochet diagram. We're going to follow along with some crochet instructions and work on a hat that's top down together. And then throughout the entire lesson, I'm going to give you some tips and tricks and explanations on why we're doing what we're doing and how we're going about it. Now, there's a lot of information that I could pack into this section. And if I did that, this would be like an all-day course, right? We don't want that. So I'm really giving you the basics today. So it's crochet top-down hat basics. It includes a free hat pattern and a link to a second hat pattern that is made from the bottom up. Really simple to do, easy. And I know once you understand the concept of how to do these increases, you could also understand the concept of the decreasing from the body to the crown. So that's how that goes. So I know a lot of you in here are primarily knitters, right? Or you used to be primarily knitters. You used to only knit, and you're learning in how to do more and more crochet. I found it interesting recently. You guys know that I am part of the Hamilton Southeastern track team, and we just got a brand new head track coach. And when he found out I was a knitter and crocheter, he asked, how long have you been doing it? And I kind of joked around. I was like, hey, I could show you. And he says to me, I used to make crocheted hats all the time in college because he used to be a snowboarder, and he used to crochet hats all the time, which reminded me that that was actually a really big thing when I lived in Colorado. I recently moved to Indiana. There are a lot of snowboarders, skiers, runners, a lot of outdoorsy hiker type people, men, women, boys, girls, and everything in between, who like to crochet hats, because once you get the concept of what you're doing, it's really easy to do. It's an easy project to take with you if you're looking for that project that you can have always on the go and just ready to pick up and work. I always recommend having one of the, I've got, this is really bad when I turn to look for my Erin Lane bag and I'm like, well, which one should I show? I don't know. Like, I've got so many. Which one should I show? Really, I like the sock bag. Where is my sock bag? I just got a new one. Oh, there it is. Got a new one. So like, those of you who don't know, Erin Lane Bags, the owner is Lindsay Martin. She's one of my best friends. She's also a sponsor of a lot of the different events that we do, but she makes these fantastic bags and she designs all of the fabric that she uses. So this in particular is a sheeple, and it is on the Great Wall of China. This is part of the Destination Lane series that she does. But this particular bag, I've said particular now like 5 times. This is a sock bag. There's nothing in the middle there. It has a really great drawstring. Look at this drawstring, okay? You pull the drawstring like this. I guarantee you put anything in there, it's not coming out. It does not come undone. But the great thing is you see this little snap here, this snap, you can put this on your belt loop. You can put this on the handle of your purse, anywhere, and you can have a travel project with you. So the reason I bring this particular bag up in particular, there's particular again, is it's a great size bag for hat projects. So if you start making this hat project today, you're like, this is really fun. I want to keep making these, whether it's maybe it's for preemies at a hospital, or maybe it's for your local homeless shelter, or just in general, you want everybody to have matching hats this year for your Christmas card, and you want to make sure that you're able to work on them all the time. That sock bag from Erin Lane Bags is a fantastic purchase. And I will let you guys know that she is going live tonight for her special fabric. I'll just leave it at that. Her special fabric she's going live tonight for a live sale over on the Erin Lane Bags Facebook page. So you should check that out. I think that goes live at 9:00 Eastern time. So if you're interested at all in checking out some of the new fabrics and trying to get some of those, you could do that, or just go check out her website, erinlanebags.com, and do all that. So it's a great way to use to carry around your travel projects. So as I was saying, a lot of you are knitters in here, or primarily knitters, or used to be primarily knitters, and you've probably made quite a few hats. And the great thing about hats, I mean, honestly, I should do a reel on how many hats I've made, because I've made so many hats. I love hats. I actually wore my my hat today. It's like this color. I can't think of the name all of a sudden, guys. It's like it's a drop. Oh man, it's going to bother me. I'm going to have to look it up, what the name of my own hat pattern. I can't remember the name of it. And so I wore it today, and I was just like, gosh, I love making knit hats. Like, it's just one of my favorite things to do. And the thing that I hate most about knit hats is that I always have to remember to bring my double pointed needles, right? My double dip ribbed hat. That's what I wore today to track practice, because I had track practice this morning. My double dip ribbed hat. Let me grab a link here and I will put it in the chat for you, because it is a free pattern on the website, but you can purchase the ad-free PDF should you choose. Anyways, what I don't like is that I always have to remember my DPNs. And it's not that I don't like DPNs. Those of you who've been with me, you know I love DPNs. I love them. But half the time I'll be working on a hat and I will think to myself, oh, I'm not going to get to the crown yet, because I make all my hats really from the bottom up when I knit. And so I'll grab my bag. I'm like, oh, I don't need my double points yet. And I'll be somewhere and I won't have them. Now, could I do magic loop? Absolutely. But when I'm using these little 16-inch circulars, magic loop on 16-inch circulars is tricky, and it just takes longer. And I don't think my stitches look as good. So that's the most frustrating part for me when it comes to knitting hats on the go, is that I will often forget my DPNs. So the beauty about crochet hats on the go, and crochet in general, right? It's usually you just need one hook. Very seldom do you need 2 different hook sizes. Now we're going to talk a little bit about that today when we get down to talking about if we want to add a ribbing to today's hat pattern. But for the most part, you just need your hook, you need your yarn, and your pattern. And as we look at today's pattern, and we're using very basic, very simple stitches, my goal here is that you'll be able to use this pattern sort of as a jumping off point, as a recipe, as one that's just going to be embedded in your brain and you're going to be able to use it and move forward and make lots of things. Now, the yarn that I chose for this project is Wonder Fluff. If you guys followed along at all with the material list, Wonder Fluff is what I had you get for this week's project. And I had you get 2 balls of this. Couple reasons. I wasn't sure what size everybody was going to make. And at the time, I wasn't sure if I was going to do basic stitches or a little bit more complex stitches. And I went back to just doing basics. I was like, you know what? I'm going to bare bones it. Let's do just a basic recipe so that we can build on that, right? It's kind of like having that chocolate chip recipe as your base recipe. Like everybody knows the Nestlé Toll House, right? Chocolate chip recipe. But then we all have our little tweaks on and improving and stuff. And I think of crochet and knit projects like that. Like there's that recipe that's the base chocolate chip recipe. And then you get to decide, do you want to add walnuts? Do you want to add butterscotch chips? Do you want to use, I don't know, tartar something or other? I don't know, whatever. Do you want to use applesauce instead of butter? Like there's all these different things that you could do to make things different. I'm getting so off pace and you can tell I'm hungry. But we're going to do a basic recipe crochet hat today with Wonder Fluff. And so I chose Wonder Fluff again. I love the feel of it. It's a nice, big, bulky yarn. And if you haven't seen it yet, it's like a tube. It's like cylindrical in the way it's made. I don't know if you guys can see that. Like it's a little bit fuzz. It's just delightful. I knit a hat. I knit a hat with this for the Stash Busting Quickies. It's actually one of my favorite hats. I love it very much. The fiber content on this particular yarn is baby alpaca, nylon, and merino wool. So it's 70% baby alpaca, 23% nylon, and 7% merino wool. Fun fact, I am typically allergic to alpaca, which is funny because alpaca is a hypoallergenic fiber. I do not itch with this, like ever. So that was another big plus for me. Last but not least, the reason I chose this yarn is because I like how big it is. I like that it's going to give us a lot of bang for our buck without having to do a whole lot of stitches. And we're going to talk a little bit about that and how you can tweak today's pattern with the stitches. Speaking of today's pattern, let me pull it up so that we can take a look at it. If I can, come on, give me a preview. Give me a preview page, please. Give me a preview page. Come on. Oh my goodness. This is where all the fun is, guys. I can't ever get the pages to come up. Let me see. Let me try this. Why am I having such a hard time? Here we are. Okay. And there. Oh. This is where I wish I had somebody else with me to like talk to you while I'm trying to do these things. All right. So I'm going to put that over there so that way I can see it. All right. So let me do a share and I will be able to take a look at this with all of you. So share screen, share window, share that. And there we are. There's the share. That's what we want. Okay. So this particular link right up here, I have got to get that word particular out of my brain. I don't know why it's in my brain today. Whatever you do not do. Don't do shots every time I say particular. All right. So for today, the link is provided in the video description box below this video, and I will be sure to add this video to this particular instruction as well. So I'll be sure to do that. This will get jazzed up by Catherine. She'll go in and add a little bit more words and more information for you. But really, I just wanted to make sure I had the bare bones information in there for you to go over everything today with you. So that's just a basic image. So I'm going to keep scrolling down here. Right here is where I'm going to put a link to today's video, that what you guys are watching right here. So that will be there. But right here, finished measurements for a top-down hat. What I did here was I included this sizing chart. And it's basically a breakdown of, hey, here are the basic sizes for the different hats of what that is out there. So you'll see that if you're looking for a 3 to 6 month old, you're looking for about a 17-inch circumference hat. In centimeters, it's 43.18, so on and so forth. So could be a little tool for you just to use to kind of be like, oh, about how big of a hat do I need? Now, you need to remember that crochet has some flexibility to it. So sometimes making something, especially if it has some airiness to the stitches, you want to make sure that you are accounting for that. You want to make sure that you account for the stretch. So for example, if you made a pattern that had a lot of stretch and you made it to the, let's pick the biggest size, the 24 or 25-inch circumference. It could be that once they start to wear it, it starts to droop on them and fall down. So it might be that you want to do a little bit more negative ease, and don't be scared by that term. All that means is you're making something that's a little bit smaller than the size it's intended to wear. How many of you out there who grew up in the 80s and 90s saw those shirts that were like the ribbed shirts that were like super small, but then you put them on and they were like form-fitting to your body? Those shirts were made with negative ease. As they were sitting there on their own, they looked really small, right? But they would stretch out to form fit around your body. So it's sort of the same idea when you're talking about items like hats, or if you wanted to do a ribbing, or a form-fitting sweater or anything like that. It's negative ease. Negative ease means if I am 12 inches and I want it to fit pretty form-fitting and really fit around my body, I make something 11 inches, and that would be a 1-inch negative ease. Make sense? And it's the opposite for positive ease. If you're 12 inches and you want it to be a little bit bigger, you make it 13 inches. That's a 1-inch positive ease. If that makes any sense to you guys. So this chart over here is not necessarily like, hey, these are all the sizes that are in this pattern. Spoiler alert, they're in a different pattern that's linked below this for the bottom up, the Chic and Simple Hat. But I put those in there so that way, as we're going through this process of making this particular hat, and you take this idea of a recipe and apply it to other things where you want to increase the number of stitches, decrease the number of stitches, you have the correct circumference of what you're going for as far as the size is supposed to be. Same thing goes for the height. So when you look down here, the height of a hat, these are the generic heights of a hat. Now, does this include a ribbing or whatnot? I'm going to say yes, this is like the total height of a hat. This is where it typically is. You can make it longer. Nobody is telling you can't. There are no crochet police, with the exception of me telling you have to weave in your ends. So honestly, you can make it as long as you want. Some hats, you can make them a little bit bigger circumference and a little bit longer, and you have more like a Rastafarians type hat, and you can make the ribbing a little bit more negative ease. So if you had a negative ease sort of ribbing around your hat, but then the hat itself was a little bit bigger, a little bit longer, the negative ease of your ribbing would keep it on your head, and you'd have this nice kind of big hat. Really great for people with a lot of hair. You guys know that I've been wearing a lot of wigs lately, and it's amazing to me how different my hats fit from, my head when it's just like this versus when I have a wig on, like, because I've never used to having that much hair. So I'm like, wow, this is amazing. So if you have a lot of hair, if you have a bigger head, or like I have friends who have dreadlocks and they like their hats a little bit bigger. Now, I mean, of course, I knew that they needed a bigger hat to fit everything in, but it makes more sense to me now that I've been wearing wigs and had a chance to play around with that a little bit more. So there are opportunities for you to take these measurements and use them as a guide to take that recipe that we're going to use and use these really as a guide for, hey, this is the generic size about what you want to go for. Everybody good with that? Give me a show of hands. Let me know that this is making sense so far. I'm looking in the chat. There's quite a few here in the live chat, which makes me very happy. Thank you so much for being patient with me and waiting for me to get over here. Okay, awesome. This makes me so happy. You guys are doing great. Okay, so looking back over here, the gauge that I have for this pattern, I put 10 double crochets. So that's a rather large gauge, right? Because this is a rather large yarn. And I used a 6.5 all right, a 6.5 millimeter crochet hook, which is a K hook. The cool thing here is I liked the idea of using 10 as my gauge, right? And that's 10 double crochet over 4 inches. If you break that down, you would take 10.5 divided by 4, and you would get 2.5 double crochet per inch. So knowing that, if you had another yarn, okay, this goes back to the whole idea of you have a recipe. You have another yarn you want to use. Let's say Swish worsted. All right. You want to use Swish worsted and you're like, okay, I cannot get 10 double crochet with this. This would be like it would look like it was filet crochet. So you're like, I'm going to use like a smaller hook. I'm going to use an H hook and I'm going to get more like 16 to 18 stitches is 4 inches. So obviously that means your gauge is a lot different. So you would calculate, 16 or 18 stitches for 4 inches. So it would take 16 or 18 divided by 4 and come up with that number. Then all you'd have to do there is take a look at your chart above, right up here for the circumference. And we're talking as if you're just doing basic stitches. We're not doing a stitch pattern or anything. We're just doing double crochets. For those of you who are knitters, it's like we're just doing stockinette. Okay. It's just like we're just doing stockinette. So, let's for pretend, let's say it was 18 divided by 4. So it'd be 4.5 stitches per inch. And let's say we wanted to make something for a toddler, which is about 20 inches. So we would take 4.5 stitches per inch, right? So that means it's 4.5, like a half stitches to make 1 inch. And we know that ultimately we want 20 inches. So we would take 5.4 and we'd multiply that by 20. Oops, by 20. And we would have 90 stitches. So that would let us know that, hey, as we begin to increase for our crown, we want to get to 90 stitches. That will give us our 20 inches at the top of our crown. Okay. And so what we could do is, as we're looking at this pattern and looking at how I do the increases and you understand the concept, you then can decide, okay, well, this particular pattern has us increase in sections of 8. We're increasing 8 stitches each time around. Maybe you change the pattern up, and because it's 90 stitches, you're like, well, what goes into 90? Well, 9 goes into 90 and 10 goes into 90. Well, 10's really easy to work with. So maybe you do an increase of 10 stitches each time. So you play around with your stitch count that way. Or maybe you're like, I don't really like that. Maybe I am going to go to 9. So you play around with doing 9 increases around instead of 10. But your ultimate goal is to get to that 90, right? Because that 90, in theory, should give you your 20 inches around circumference. And then from that point, you just work around. So you're working around like that. It's going to give you a circle. And then as you just start working around without any increases, it's gonna cone and start to come down. Now I'm jumping ahead just a little bit here, but just as a side note, sometimes working your circle at the top, your crown, a little bit less than your full circumference that you want, just working it a little bit less, and then increasing a little bit later, makes it so it's not so like basket-like. But that's really one of those finesse things that you kind of play around with as time goes on. But at this point, let me know what I'm saying to you about figuring out, what's your stitch gauge, and you have the information now of, oh, this is the general circumference I want. So what's my ultimate number of stitches I want to get to? And then with the information we're about to learn, you can take that and say, oh, that's how I'm going to get there. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? And just a reminder, this information the link is in the video description box below. So you can put this page in your Marley Bird folder if you have your Marley Bird folder, so that you have BiCrafty Bootcamp lesson 11 there. I'm waiting for you guys to leave me comments. I'm waiting for you people. I'm going to take a drink. Okay. Zony3 Girl says yes. Barb says yes. Michaela says yes. Okay, good. That makes me happy. Sometimes I'm talking, it makes sense to me. So got to make sure it makes sense to you. Okay. So that's why I put that particular chart in this pattern, as I wanted you to have it so that you can use that part of your recipe idea, right? And just so you guys know that there's a lot of bloggers out there who've done recipe type top-down crochet hat patterns like this. So if for some reason you come across somebody else's, like their information, It's probably going to be very similar to mine, maybe a little tweaks of difference. But for the most part, I mean, this is the chocolate chip recipe of crochet top down patterns. Okay, everybody has one, right? Everybody has one. And so you're going to be great as long as you follow along and you understand the concept. So we're using 10 double crochet. And here's the cool thing, guys. We're using 10 double crochet as equals 4 inches, but say you're working on yours and yours is off just a little bit. Maybe you're getting 9, maybe you're getting 8, maybe you're getting 12. You now have the tools to adjust what we're doing or what the pattern is for you to make your pattern fit. Cool, right? So like, you know how to do that. All right, so the materials, again, Wonder Fluff. That's what we have here, Wonder Fluff. I love it. I think it's so cool. A K crochet hook, stitch markers, tapestry needle. You don't need a stitch marker, but you guys know me. I mean, you guys know me by this point. I'm always going to have a stitch marker. Stitch marker and tapestry, stitch markers and tapestry needles are always, they're the staple on all of my instructions. All of my instructions. All right, abbreviations. Nothing here that I don't think there's anything here you don't understand. Chain, slip stitch, single crochet, half double, double, and beginning chain. Sort of a cool side note, those of you who've been following along with BiCrafty Bootcamp have probably fallen in love with the stacked double crochet. You absolutely could you could swap out the chain 3 to start, that is a double crochet in this pattern, with a stacked double crochet. You can do that. I didn't add that in here because I wanted this pattern to be a little bit, I'm going to say a little bit more universal, because the stacked double crochet really is, I always say I didn't make it up, but at the same time, I wasn't like, I just made it up. Like, I'm sure somebody has done it in the past. Somebody's probably done it before. Who knows? I didn't know. I just did it one day and I was like, oh, that's really cool. And I did it. So it's not something that's very commonly known. And so I wanted to make sure this pattern was one that even just somebody who didn't go through BiCrafty Bootcamp could pick it up and work on it. You guys with me on that? Okay, cool. So when you look at this and you see those chain 3s, if you're like, Marley, can I do a stacked double crochet? I really like the stacked double crochet. The answer is yes. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. All right, general diagram for the crown increases. So you'll see here, this diagram, this goes all the way out to round 7. And if you're making one of the larger sizes, there's actually 8 rounds. Tried to show as many as I could fit on here, right? But basically, as you look at this, it makes perfect sense as we're working along, right? When you work on most knit hat patterns, you'll see at the top, it's a pretty, do I have this? Did I do it on here? Oh, this is probably easier to show. Like, let me switch views. Like on even knit hat patterns, as they come around, you can see they come around, it's like segments of an orange, right? And they're all kind of lined up. They come around and they meet in the middle, and you have this really beautiful top of the hat, right? Because this one's bottom up, right? So as we're doing top down in crochet, we're really starting here and coming this direction. Well, if you stack, for lack of a better word, if you stack or line up your increases as you're working from the top down, sometimes you get sort of a hexagon kind of look, and it's not intentional. And it actually doesn't really affect the whole overall look when you're going on to the crown. I've done a few hats that way too. But by staggering those increases every other round, we get a much more uniform circular look. So I point that out because you might come across other patterns in the future where these increases, can you see this increase right here? Can I highlight it? Nope, I can't. This increase right here where it's 2 double crochet into 1 half double. You guys see that? You'll see that it'll be like, oh, okay, so there's 2 into 1, and then maybe they put 2 into 1 always into that one, and 2 into 1 always into that one. And it would be every round, okay? But you can see here, we have an increase right here in the first one. There's 2 into that one. But on round 4, we don't increase until the next stitch over. Can you see that? Like, it isn't stacked up right on top of the increase. Like this, on round 3, the increase is done in the first one. On round 4, it's done in the 4th one. On round 5, it's done in the 3rd one. On round 6, it's done in the 1st one. On round 7, it's done in the 5th one. You see how they're getting staggered about, and that's going to give us a much more uniform circle. Now, there are patterns, like I said, where they're all stacked up and you'll get like a really nice, beautiful line. I like that myself, actually. I've done that quite often. I should have brought over a sample of that. I didn't bring over a sample. I will do better at that, I promise. Actually, does this have that? This might not show very well. I don't think this is going to show very well. I'm going to try it. Let me try this. This pattern has not been released. Let me see. Can you see how there's like, it's like, see if I can, there's like a segment. You can see all the shaping is lined up. It's all lined up and it looks like it's like a curve, like a pinwheel. Can you guys see that at all? Yes, cool. Awesome. So when you stack, for this one, these were stacked decreases because this is work from the bottom up. But the same idea, if we stacked our increases, we would get like these lines and it would be sort of pinwheel-esque. When we stagger our increases, it just gives us a little bit more uniform. Again, I'm pointing that all out because if you come across other patterns that are stacked up and you're like, oh, what's going on? Why do I have this line? That's perfectly normal and natural. It's just a different way to do the shaping. All right. It's just a different way to do the shaping. Oh, how I like that even better. I should do that. Okay. So as we read this chart, we've focused a lot on reading charts, right? As part of BiCrafty Bootcamp, that was very important for me to make sure that you knew how to do this because reading charts has helped me immensely through the years of becoming a better crocheter. So I'm trying to make this larger for all of you to see. As we read this chart, we're going to start here in the center, and there is a circle here, which you might be like, what in the heck is that? Have we done this? No, that is called a magic circle. That's the symbol for a magic circle. Sometimes it'll also be a little swiggle, like a swirl. So we're going to start with something called the magic circle. Don't fret if you cannot do it very well. I've got alternatives, which is great because then you can also learn alternatives to the magic circle. But at the end of the day, it's really not super difficult to do. And it's something you can translate into knitting also. If you wanted to do something from the top down, you can start with the magic circle in knitting also. But all it does essentially, you guys, is you're going to be crocheting around the string and the tail, which I know that sounds funny. And then when you pull the tail, it tightens up the string, it closes the hole, but you have to be sure that you really weave in that tail later on because it will open up just like a drawstring, just like this, right? So if we crocheted, imagine our grosgrain ribbon here is the string we're going to crochet around. And then these are all of our stitches. So we get all of our stitches on there and then we pull our string. All of our stitches are going to come together and make a really nice pucker in the top of our hat, right? But these strings are here. If I don't go back and consider these are tails, right? You'll only have one, by the way. If you don't weave in your tail, the top of your hat over wear and tear is going to open up. Now, that doesn't happen with these because the grosgrain ribbon has the ridges and we have two ribbons. But if it was just one ribbon, it would gradually start to open up. And then all of a sudden, the top of your hat would become, a messy bun hat, maybe unintentionally. So that's why you will make sure you really pull the top of the hat and then weave in your ends. But it's a great way to pull together a top of a hat that makes it so you don't have a hole. Now, if you don't like that, you can always do chains and then crochet around your chains and then just close the hat hole at the top, close with your tail later, like weave it through all of them and pull it closed. That's perfectly fine too. You can do either one that works, but that's what that circle means. I wanted to make sure you knew what that circle meant. Is that's going to be an adjustable ring or a magic loop or a magic ring, or has a lot of different names. I think it's always been called adjustable ring. Which reminds me, I need to make sure I add a video for weaving in your ends for your adjustable ring because I have a video for that, because I have a video for almost everything. At least I try to. All right, so when we start, we'll do our adjustable ring. You start with the chain one, and then obviously we know what those symbols are. Those are single crochets. And so you can say here, you can count all those. We have 8. There's going to be 8 single crochets around our magic loop or our adjustable ring. And then we have a dot right there. That dot means it's a slip stitch. So we will slip stitch into our very first single crochet. Now, as you look at this chart without knowing any of the written words, we know we are not going to turn this project. Not just because I wrote the words above the chart there, right? Like not because I just wrote it right there, but we know because as you look at row 2, notice the slip stitch is on the same side as the slip stitch you did before. If you turned your work, your slip stitch would be on this side, right? It'd be to the left side, but it's still on the right side. And we can see the same is true for round 3, the same is true for round 4, same is true for round 5, so on and so forth. So that is your first clue that you can deduce down that you're looking at a chart or a diagram that is supposed to be read in the round and continue, and they're going to be joined continuous rounds. So you're not going to turn. All right. So that is one way you're going to be able to look at this and say, oh, I'm always going to read this from left to right, left to right, left to right, because your final stitch, your final slip stitch is over here on the right-hand side, and it's slip stitch into that first stitch there. You guys see that? So round 2, just like if you were doing this in knitting and we wanted to increase, we started off with 8. So then we would do an increase of 1 and 2, 1 and 2, 1 and 2. We'd put 2 stitches into 1 stitch all the way around. So we go from 8 stitches to 16 stitches. You go to round 3, you'll notice that we have an increase in 1 stitch. So right, there's 2 stitches into 1, and then there's 1 stitch in between. 2 stitches into 1, 1 stitch in between. So we're going to go from 8 stitches to 16 stitches. 16 plus 8 is 24. And then from 24, we go to 32 because we're going to increase 8 stitches each time. And if we were to increase, put it like 2 stitches into each stitch all the way around each time, obviously we're going to get more than 8. So that's why you will see that between each of your increases, there's always an extra stitch between them on the next round. So you go from round 1, we have 8 stitches. Round 2, there's 2 stitches into each one. Round 3, there's 2 stitches into 1 and then 1 solitary stitch. 2 stitches into 1, 1 solitary stitch. Round 4, I'm just going to skip over here to where there's 2 stitches. There's 2 stitches into 1, 2 solitary stitches. 2 stitches into 1, 2 solitary stitches. Let's go to round 5. I'm going to skip over to where there's 2 stitches. 2 stitches into 1, 3 solitary stitches. 2 stitches into 1, 3 solitary stitches. Can you see the theme? So we went from 1 solitary to 2 solitary to 3 solitary. The next one will have 4 solitary. The next one will have 5 solitary, so on and so forth. Does that make sense to everybody? Give me a show of hands. Let me know. Yes. Leave me a comment. Let me know this is good. All right. So as you go from one round to the next, you're always going to increase the number of stitches between your increases. All right. Now that holds true whether you are quote unquote stacking your increases like one on top of another, or if we stagger them like we're going to do on this. Okay. You're always going to increase the number of stitches you have between your increases by 1. All right. If you do not do that, your circle is going to be wavy and curly and it's not going to turn out right. So in order for it to work out correctly, that's how it's going to play out. Now, going back to what I mentioned before about staggering our increases instead of stacking them all up, just like I mentioned on this hat when they are all stacked, the decreases. As we look here, you can see, so like I said, there's an increase right here on round 3, and then the increase for round 4 is it starts over here. Round 5, it starts over here. Round 6, it starts over here. They're just staggering them so that they aren't stacked on each other, but the same principle applies. So the same idea of this recipe applies. You can see that when you get to where the increase starts, you still have one more solitary stitch between the increases from the previous round. So it's the same recipe. It's just we shifted them a little bit so that the way they weren't all stacked on top of each other. Okay. Again, I'm trying to reiterate this. I know I keep repeating myself on that, but I want to make sure you get that this is what we're doing is still basic increases. It's just we're going to move where our increase is so that way we get a better round circle. But when you come across other patterns where they're stacked on each other, whether it's an increase or a decrease, you're still going to get a circle-esque. It's just made a little bit different. It's totally fine. Okay. All right. So I'm going to keep scrolling down here. And this is where the pattern actually starts. So we're going to start at the crown and we're going to make an adjustable ring. And then we're going to jump in and we're going to follow along with our chart. Okay. So let me come over here and get here I am right here. So Sheehan, I am going to be going over the hat a little bit more. Maybe it will help as we actually show how this works. I'm going to go down to my hands and we're actually going to make this hat together. You guys can make any size hat you wish. You can make the large, you can make the small. You can even make like a baby size if you want to just get the gist of what's going on. It doesn't matter to me. And then somebody remind me before we end, just to go back and review one more time, if you wanted to take this recipe instead of doing like, maybe I don't have to review it. Maybe you guys already get it when I'm like, you don't have to increase by 8 each time. You could change it to where instead of starting with 8, maybe you start with 6, maybe you start with 5, maybe you start with 10, maybe, you can start with whatever you want, but the same principle applies with the increase. The number of stitches between your increases, the same principle applies. You can adjust how many increases you have. And for the word for the wise, you could do like maybe you need your numbers to reach a certain stitch count for a stitch pattern. You could do like it's 8, 8, 8, and maybe you need to go to 10 on the next one, or maybe you need to do 6 on the next one. Or you guys who are following along with this for the larger sizes, you'll notice that on the last round 8, you don't increase 8, you increase 4, because if I did 8, it'd be massive. Even 4, I'm a little bit leery, but you can play around with it. You'll be able to tweak it a little bit. All right. Okay. Let me pull my hands in because my hands are on my camera phone. I can't do a really pretty shot like what everybody else does. I don't know how to make my camera phone view go to my computer so that I can share my computer screen. You'd think I'd be more tech savvy at this point, but you know what? There's only so much bandwidth in my head for me to work through. So this is what I got. All right, let me plug this in. I see all of you. I love that you guys are giving me feedback. Thank you so much. I appreciate that very much because Lord knows I need it. Okay, so I'm going to remove that. Add to stream. Haha. Is that better or is that better? I have a feeling this one is better. So you guys, I'm going to sound like my friend Ann Burke. 1 or 2? 1 or 2? Let me know which one is better. 1 or 2? And this is going to be my view. I'm going to be crocheting right here. As I wipe off I swear, do you guys ever feel like your desk just collects everything? All right, 2. All right, that's what I thought. I thought 2 was better too, but I wasn't sure. All right. First thing up, let's learn the adjustable ring. Now, I want you guys to be aware, let me start this again. You guys have to remember that you promised me you're going to give yourself grace. You're going to be patient with yourself and give yourself time to get this, because the adjustable ring, as easy as it is, it's one of those things that a lot of people really struggle with. And one moment is just going to click, but until you get there, it could be a little bit tricky. All right. So I'm going to teach you the best way I know how as I try and do everything. By the way, with Wonder Fluff, you could grab it from the outside or the inside. I tend to grab mine from the outside just because I'm just so afraid of grabbing a bunch of guts in there. So I just tend to grab, well, hello, Miss Pearl. Hello. Do you want to say hi to the people? Hello. Say hello, people. Hello. Hello. Oh, yes, I kisses. Hi. Yes. Okay. I got to teach. Okay. I know I got to go teach. Say bye, people. And she's leaning in. I'm sorry. Okay. I got to teach, baby girl. Okay. Go lay down. Go lay down. She's like, but mom. Okay. So the outside is where I like to grab it. And then, oh, she's tearing upstairs. Okay. So we're going to start off with our slip knot. All right, so it's just like a slip knot. However, we're not going to pull the slip knot all the way closed. We're going to keep it open. So we're going to have our tail. For this, I like to leave a little bit of a longer tail than I normally do, just because it helps me make sure that I don't lose it in the process of doing the adjustable ring. So I'm going to leave a little bit longer tail than I normally do. Take my working yarn, wrap it around my forefinger and middle finger, and cross over. Rotate my hand underneath the front loop, grab the back loop, and pull it off. Now, here's the thing. I'm not going to pull it all out yet. Where my fingers are, that is the ring. That's what I want to keep open. By the way, I have to go get my nails done, so I apologize for the terrible manicure. Like, this nail broke, and then that my dip manicure fell off. I mean, this is ridiculous. So I apologize profusely. Anyways, if you can get past my fingernails, where this hole is right here, where between my two fingers, that's what we want to keep open. This cross right here that we created, right? This is our crossover right here. That's our crossover that we created. And then we just pulled this underneath. Let me start this all again. We have our tail, yarn around, crossover, rotate. This cross right here, we want to hold it. So as I pull this through, the cross that we created, I'm just going to kind of pinch it and then take my fingers out. So you see, that's what I pulled up. Here's my cross. Put my hook in. And as I start to do this, if I have this cross here and kind of stick my finger in there, this hole right there, that's where I'm going to be crocheting. So the loop that's on my hook is just a loop on my hook. So I have to chain one. So I'm going to chain one. I'm going to hold my hook. And now I'm going to single crochet. So you see all this crossover here? I want that to stay crossed over, but I'm just going to crochet around all of it. So I put my hook in, yarn over, pull up, yarn over, draw through 2. So I'm going to do 8 of them. So think of this, it's just a big circle, right? It's just a big circle. I'm just going to crochet that big circle. 1, 2. Now make sure you're not going super tight. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. All right, so I'm going to pause right there. So that's 8. So I have this nice big circle. What will happen now is we've crocheted around this circle. So when I pull this closed, it's going to pull all of this, because this here is just the thread that's around there, which is this, right? It's all the same. So when I pull this tail, it's going to pull all of this closed to where this meets up with that over there. Okay? You guys get that? So here I go. I'm going to, actually, I'll leave my hook in there. I'm going to try and show you this. I'm trying to show you the best I can. So I'm just going to kind of hold this last single crochet I did and just pull my tail. It's hard to do it with my hook. You see the tail's coming closed? You see that? So now with my 8, there's my tail. I could just put it aside now. I'm not going to do anything with it. I am now up here to where my very first single crochet was. I think it's this one. It's a little bit hard to see with the fuzzy yarn, so make sure you're paying attention. And I'll do a slip stitch. Now, before I go any further, I'm going to count. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then that's my slip stitch. You guys get that? If you do not want to use a magic ring, totally fine. Let me just grab some other yarn here. If you don't want to use a magic ring, what you could do you could do your slip knot. Oh, do that again. Do your slip knot. You could chain 2. And then in the first chain that you did, you could put 8 single crochet in there. It's going to leave a little bit of a hole, but it will work. All right, so you put 8 into that one, come all the way up, join with your slip stitch. At the end, you'll take your tail and you'll close up the little hole that you have. Does that help? Thank you, Sky. Sky says make sure you hit that like button for sure. Just so you guys know, every time you hit that like button and you hit subscribe and you leave me a comment on the actual video, YouTube likes that. All right. Okay, so we have 8 single crochets. So we've essentially established our circle. It's like we just put all of our brown sugar and our white sugar in the mixing bowl. Now it's time to add our vanilla and our butter and our salt and get going with our cookies. So at this point, we need to work our first round of increases. Now, my increases, I started with half double crochets. You'll notice I started with singles, then I'm going to half doubles, and then I went to doubles. You could start with doubles, you could start with half doubles, you could start with anything. I like the way it looks going from singles to half doubles to doubles. You do whatever works for you, okay? I like the way this looks though. So for this first round, we're going to do a round of half double crochets. And remember, this is going to start our increases. So we're going to put 2 half doubles into each one single crochet around. So at the end of this round, you should have 16 half double crochets. All right, 16. All right, so we start off with our chain 1. Notice we did not turn, right? You did not turn. Now, I'm going to give you guys a little tip here. You can decide, this is something that nobody really told me much when I first started crocheting. We slip stitched into that first stitch there, right? Which means this right here, this V back there behind our chain 1, it looks, can you guys see the V? That one there? It looks like it should be a stitch, but that's our slip stitch. We're not supposed to do really anything into it. However, if we started our first 2 stitches into that stitch and then worked them all the way around, we would put our last 2 into the slip stitch. If you work the first 2 into the same stitch you did your slip stitch, then you would leave your the slip stitch right down there on, you know, that V naked. My point here is decide which one you're going to do and be consistent with it. So for me, I'm going to stick with putting my first stitch into the same one that I joined with my slip stitch, just because that's easier for me to remember. Now, I don't do that always. Sometimes I do that, but sometimes I do the opposite. But it's a good way to start. All right. So that means I'm going to yarn over and I'm going to look for the same stitch that I did my slip stitch into with my join. So I'm going to put my hook into it and work my half double. So there's 1. Now this is where I'm going to pause. So that way I don't have to look for things next time. And I'm going to put my marker into that V behind the loop on my hook. And then I'm going to put my second one into that same stitch. Right? So now I have the start of my round. I don't have to look for it anymore. Oh, did my phone? Okay, cool. So now I'm going to do that all the way around. So there's 1 and 2. So there's 3 and 4. And here is 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 . 9 and 10, 11 and 12. And yes, I absolutely count to myself like this when I'm doing things. And there's 13 and 14 and 15 and 16. And now you're probably going to be able to see much better what I'm talking about. You see right there, it looks like, oh, there's another stitch there. And you might be tempted to try and put your hook into there and be like, oh, I'm going to put a stitch there. And trust me, it's very common. A lot of people do that. And they accidentally will increase more than they need to. But if you have counted correctly and you've made a conscious decision to put your first stitch in the same one that you did your slip stitch join into, you won't have that problem. Let me see if I can turn this way a little while yeah, that's better. At the end of each round, until I get comfortable with everything, I tend to count, especially when I'm doing really basic stitches like this. If I'm doing a stitch pattern, it's easy to know if you're off, right? Because the stitch pattern doesn't work out at the end. But when you're just doing basic double crochets, it's difficult to do. Guys, my mom is like blowing up my phone. So give me a second. Let me just text her real quick. So that way she knows. I am so sorry. This is super unprofessional, but she keeps, okay, I am on a live right now. Come here to my house. All right. She's like trying to get a hold of me. I'm like, Mom, just give me a second. Okay. So here we are. We're at the end. So I've got my 16 half doubles, and now I'm going to join with my slip stitch. And because I added that really handy stitch marker that I love, I don't have to search where the very first half double is. I can see it right there. So I can just put my hook right into where that marker is, or take my marker out, add my hook. I guess I'm supposed to do a slip stitch, and voila. I have my circle started. Okay, you guys see that? Okay, so I have my circle started. Now I continue on. Now in knitting, when you're doing decreases, right, usually you'll do a decrease and then a plain round, and then a decrease and then a plain round. Usually that's because when knitting, you don't have the same sort of height of different stitches that you get in crochet. That's why we don't typically have to do a plain round after an increase. Now, there are exceptions to that, of course, whenever we're trying to change up how we're doing shaping. But for something like this, where we're trying to get the shape of a crown of a hat, we just want to get that circle worked out, we aren't going to have plain stitches between increase rounds. Every round is an increase round. Of course, always read the pattern you're following and do what the pattern tells you to do. However, when we're doing this as just our basic recipe, we're going to increase every round. Now, following the pattern, you can see that on round 3, that's where we are. Let me see if I can do this. That's not, oh, I got to add it. There we go. On round 3, we are going to chain 3, and that's going to count as a double crochet. And again, if you did not have the words and you wanted to know if that was going to count as a double crochet, we know just looking at this chart, those chain 3s are right on top of that half double. So that gives us a clue that those are going to count as a stitch. See how those chain 3s are right on top of that half double? Plus, you can see on round 4, you see there's chain 3s, and then there's a stitch right into that chain 3. And it's counting as a stitch right there. Can you see that? You see how that is? And as you're looking at this, I want you to notice something. If we know that that chain 3 counts as a double crochet, and we're putting a double crochet immediately into that first stitch next to our chain 3s, what do we have right there? We have an increase, right? We have an increase because we have 2 double crochets directly into one stitch. So we have 2 into 1. You see that? All right. You see how useful charts are? They're a great way to be able to visually see what you're trying to do. You can decipher what the words might be telling you to do. You can check one. I mean, they're just so useful. So for round 3, we are going to do our chain 3, and then we're going to do 2 double crochets into the next half double. Now, because I'm me, if I can get my marker over here, I'm going to do a stacked, if you guys are okay with that, because I prefer a stacked. So for me, I'm going to just go right into this where I did my slip stitch. I'm going to do my stacked double crochet. If you're not familiar with the stacked double crochet, hopefully you are, you can do a chain 3. That would be fine. When I get done with my stacked, I'm going to take my marker and put it right there into that V right behind the loop on my hook. Okay. That's my stacked double. That counts as my double crochet. So now I'm going to come to the next stitch over and I'm going to work my increase. So I'm going to do 2 double crochets into this. Could I do 2 half doubles? Yes. I mean, it would just change up everything that you're doing, but you could do it. Like that's a whole different stitch. Now, because I know my recipe says once I do an increase, I have to have 1 solitary stitch and then an increase and then a solitary stitch on this round. Without even looking at the pattern, I know that my next stitch is just a double crochet. And then I'll do an increase. So I'll put 2 into 1. And then 1. Okay, my mom is calling. Hi, Mom. I'm on speaker and I'm on a live on YouTube. Can you just come over here to the house? All right. Thank you. I love her. Okay. All right. So here's a very good thing. If you get lost on where you are because somebody calls you, rip out what you have. Just take a peek. Find where you have your increase. Oh, look, I have 2 into that one. I'm on a round where it looks like I only have 1 solitary between them. So I automatically, because I'm working with the recipe, I know the next one is just a solitary. And then I'm on an increase. You guys with me here? Everybody with me? Everybody, gotta love Mom. Michelle says, gotta love Mom. Yes, you do. Maybe she'll come down when she gets here. Come say hello. All right, 2 and 1, 2 and 1. I mean, honestly, guys, this is how I go around circles. I will constantly go back and look at what I have done in order to make sure I'm at the right place because I just get confused. And I will be honest, very seldom do I stagger my increases. I like to stack them, for a better word, lack of a better word, because it helps me with the way I think, because it helps me see the way the stitches are. So it's very rare that I stagger them, but it is done that way. And I wanted to make sure you guys know that. So we're learning that. All right, go back here. And again, I'm constantly just like, oh, okay, there's 1 because there's 2 into that one. I'm just checking myself, right? I'm just checking to make sure everything's good. I'll go to the next. And this round finishes with 2 into 1, which holds true because we started off with a stacked, right? Which was our 1. So we went from 1 and then our increase, 1 and then our increase, 1 and then our increase, which of course means we're going to end with an increase and then join to our 1. So now we have this perfect circle. You guys see that? So I'll come over here. I'll join it to the top of my stacked double crochet here. This is why I don't want to use the word stacked increases because I think it will confuse people because I say stacked double. But I joined. Now I have this nice little top. Cool, right? Sort of a side note, if you were working with a cotton yarn or something like a dishcloth cotton, and yours was about this big, you could stop and you have little like face pads like to clean your face and stuff at night. Just so you know. All right. Okay. Here. Oh, Renee, that's so sweet. Renee says it was you and your mom that gave me the confidence to knit. That means so much to me. Thank you so much. All right, so we are on round 4. Let me go back to this. So on round 4 here, you can see we begin again with those 3 chains, and then we immediately put a double crochet into the top of that chain. So that means if I'm changing this to my stacked doubles, I'm going to do a stacked double and then immediately put a double into that same stitch where I did my stacked. And like I pointed out before, this is an increase. And then we're going to have a solitary stitch, an increase, a solitary stitch, an increase. So let's go ahead. Let's get through that round. All right, so I'm going to do a stacked double here. And then I'm going to do a double crochet into that same one. Oh, you know what? I'm going to put my marker in. All right, so there's an increase. So now, because it's my recipe, I know that I have 2 solitary stitches. See, I told you I always have to go back and look. I have 2 solitary, so this is my increase. So I put 2 into this one. And I have a solitary. And another one. And then 2 into this one. Now, I'm going to go all the way around and complete this round, but I want to point something out. Like, as you're working on this, and say that you have, you know what your gauge is, you know what your circumference is supposed to be, all that jazz, and you're making this, you're like, man, that just kind of looks big, right? Like, it looks big. You can always just change things up, go rogue. Just be like, you know what, that's about big enough. And just start making it to where it starts to go around. And then you could test fit it. You could do all sorts of things. So don't feel like you have to be a slave to the pattern. Like, that's the beauty of having a recipe, is you can change things up, you know? You can decide you want to use something else anytime you want and make it work for you. And that's really handy too. If like I said, if you're getting off gauge a little bit and you're just like, I want to change this up just ever so slightly to make sure that it's actually going to fit and not like be a bowl or go completely down over your head and all that stuff. Because it happens. I've made those mistakes too. I've done that. I think this is an increase. Da, 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 da. Make sure so there's increase 1, 2. Yep. That's how we go. Sharon Bunker says that Marley also taught her with her mom, with my mom. So that's cool. That makes me happy. I really hope you guys are enjoying boot camp. And I want to say thank you so much for your patience with me when it comes to getting the time, so to speak, to get in here to do these. It's so important to me that, you know, I'm 100%, I don't know how to say, I'm 100% with it. Like, I'm 100% focused when teaching these. And sometimes late at night, later in the night and stuff, I am just toast. I am exhausted. I'm getting older, and I have to remember that, you know, I just can't, you know, bust things out as late in the evening as I usually can. And then with my schedule and my family, I have to have things a little bit flexible. So I appreciate all of you being able to be flexible with me on this. That's part of the reason I really like it when I can do workshops that are pre-recorded and everything's already done. So that way you don't ever have to wait for me to be live. However, I love teaching live because I feel like there are times that you guys will ask a question or something that maybe I hadn't thought of when I am teaching it as a pre-recorded item. And I feel like there's something to be said about the feedback I get from all of you live. Like, I really do enjoy it. So I love that we've done all of these live courses, but I'm also excited to put all of this together in pre-recorded workshop format and make it a workshop available, you know, to the masses. And when that time comes, I really do hope all of you will come back and give some testimonials and really encourage people to come and, come and, you know, take my class and learn from me how to do these items. I mean, I know a lot of people like to take free classes on YouTube and such, and I'm hoping that putting together the BiCrafty Bootcamp workshop or course is probably a better word. It will, you know, really encourage people to see the value of, you know, is a decorated teacher the right word to say? I don't know, a teacher that's, you know, not just free on YouTube and can give all the tools and lessons and tips and everything in one unit, something that you would get like at a like a course at a yarn shop or something. That's really important to me, you know? All right. So having said all of that, let's take a peek. My marker fell out. Here's 2. So this is what I would do sometimes versus counting. I'll be like, okay, there's my increase. There's my 2 solitary ones. So I have 1 increase, 2 solitary. There's my second increase, 2 solitary. Third increase, 2 solitary. 4, 2, 5, 2, 6, 2, 7, 2, 8, 2. So I have the correct number of stitches here. So I know that I can join with my slip stitch right here. And I have this little tiny hat, right? I have this little tiny hat right here. Now, as you're looking at the written instructions, we just finished round 4, right? Was that 4 or 5? I can't remember. Hold on. I gotta go back. I think it was 4. That was 4 we were looking at. You'll see in the written instructions that I have written down here. You know, why am I not sharing? Because I just wasn't thinking. Sorry. You'll see in the written instructions, which you don't need this either after you know what the chart information is. You'll see in the written instructions, by this point we have 32. After round 5, you'll have 40 double crochet. And after round 6, you'll have 48. You'll see that here I wrote at that point, you know, size 3.5 months, 6 to 1 year, and 12 to 24 stop here. Well, that's a big change, right? That's a big number. Because you know, there's a lot of your head grows in that size time frame. Not as much as like the body changes, but it goes from like 17 inches to 18 inches to 19 inches. So my point here is that if you're looking at this is still a little bit too small for a baby. This might be good for like a preemie at this point, like even a little bit a bigger preemie. Preemies are so tiny. Not with this yarn. I'm just saying the size. I'm not talking about the yarn or anything else. I'm talking about the size. But my point here is that as we come up here to the chart, you might be like, well, you know, 48 stitches, Marley, at 2.5 stitches per inch. What does that measure? So that's 48 divided by 2.5 stitches per inch. So it's 19.2 inches. So I am telling you to stop for these 3 sizes at 19.2 inches. It's kind of big, right? That seems like it's a little big. So one thing you could do, and I left it there just in case that's how you want yours to be, right? Couple things. The 19.2 inches with the Wonder Fluff, you have to remember with the thickness and the fluffiness of this yarn, there is the size. Okay, think about this. You can look at a puffer coat, right? You can look at a puffer coat and it looks bigger than it really is once you put it on, right? Because all that puff, all that puff and fluff is all around you, right? So even with this being at 19.2, and the fluff around this is going to take up some of the area. Does that make sense? If you're using a thinner yarn that doesn't have that fluff, that halo, you might want to tweak those numbers a little bit. But the fact that you have a recipe here, that's going to make it really easy for you to do. So that's why I'm like, hey, for these 3 sizes, let's stop with the 19 inches, so to speak. And hopefully that will fit your head about, you know, around for those sizes because of the extra fluff. Now, if mom got here, if you're like, you know what, that's a little bit bigger than what I want, maybe on round 4, instead of increasing 8 stitches around, you do it to where you increase 4 stitches around. And you could totally do that. Just you're going to have more stitches between your increases. You're only going to have 4 increases instead of 8, but that will give you down to, instead of, what was that, 42 stitches? 48 stitches, you'll have 44 stitches, and 44 divided by 2.5 equals 17.6. So that'll bring you a little bit closer down to like the 3 to 6 month size. Are you guys with me on this? Can you see how you can really kind of tweak these? Like I could really go in depth on this pattern and make it to where, all right, for the 3 to 6 month, we're going to only increase 4 this round. For the 6 to 12 month, we're going to increase 6 this round. And for the blah, 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 like you can really tweak those out. But I wanted to keep it really basic as possible so that you, again, can use this as a recipe. Maybe in the future we decide to make this much more in depth, more planned. I'm not there right yet. I'm not convinced that that's where I should be yet. Maybe in the future, that's what I'll do. But hopefully that makes sense to all of you, how to tweak this. So if you're looking to make a baby item, you can take this pattern and make the hat a little bit different. Now, I will give you a tip as a mom. I found it really great to have hats that were given to me a little bit bigger than what my son or my daughter, my sons or my daughter were, because they grew into them. So I like to have the hats a little bit bigger, and then the ribbing on the hat actually made it kind of fit a little bit better on the baby's head, and I really liked that. Just as a side note, as a mom, I found that really helpful in Colorado. My kids always had hats on. Can you stop? Can you please get the dogs upstairs? Thank you. We're just playing around now. So you would continue working these increases. I'm assuming you know how to do these increases now. You've watched me work through and how I count and how I'm doing the increases. And you can see here, there are different areas for you to stop. Like I said, this is the 3 to 6 month, and then it goes all the way up to like the 2 years. And then over here, this is really the toddler, child, and small adult. I mean, that's a small head. For me, I'm making this size here, adult medium, adult large, and extra large. Now, even that, it's a little bit large. You can play around with that as much as you want, but you'll notice on round 8, you're only increasing 4 stitches instead of 8. It's exactly like what I just suggested to those of you before, going from the 19 inches to the 17 inches. And when you're dealing with a gauge that's as large as ours is, just eliminating, 2 or 4 stitches can really change the whole look. But you do have to account for the fluffiness, the poof, the halo of the yarn when you're talking about the different sizing. Is my mom here? Hey, they want to say hi to you. Mom is here because I had to tell everybody that you were trying to call in and that I had to pause for a second. So mom's coming over to say hello with Miss Bree.
I was desperately calling in.
I know. So this is Bree, everybody. See, you're in that camera. This is my new puppy dog, guys. This is Brioche. Her nickname is Bree. Hello, Breezers. She's a lovey-dovey. Are you going to sleep?
Well, she's with grandma.
She's going to
grandma
sleep
now. She's going night.
All right.
Okay.
All right. So I'm gonna finish this here. Hey, Mom, look at this. Somebody here, they were saying that it was watching our videos that gave them the confidence to learn to knit. I think it was up here. I gotta go look.
Awesome.
Awesome.
I
can't find where it
Obviously, it was my teaching that gave you the confidence.
It was your screw up. It was your screw ups. Screw ups. That they're like, man, if she screws up, I'm all right. I'm doing great.
I confidently screw up.
Stephanie, I'm glad you answered your mom's calls.
There you go. Thank you very much.
See, right? Oh, there it is. Renee. Oh. It was you and your mom's. You and your mom that gave me the confidence to knit.
Oh,
isn't that great?
Yeah, because if Marley's mom can do it, anybody can do it.
Sharon said the same thing. She said right here. All right. Okay. So here we go. Let me get back. Sorry. All the breezy girl. She's so adorable, guys. Bree is so adorable. Okay. My eye itches. So you're going to increase. I'm assuming you know how to increase. You increase out to the number of stitches. Really, guys, don't overthink this. You increase out to the number of stitches you need for whatever circumference you want. So whatever yarn you're using or whatever hook you're using, you can take this whole idea of I'm increasing out until the circumference I want, because then it's easy peasy. Once the circle reaches the size you want, then you're just doing double crochets all the way around without increases. And as you do that, the first couple rounds will be a little weird. You're like, what's going on? And then it starts to cup on itself and it becomes a hat. So, as you're doing that, you do that until it reaches the height that we already have written on there. I like to go to where it goes like, I've been stopping my hats to where it's like here on my ear. I actually prefer where it's down there, if that makes any sense. However, you'll notice one of the options on here is that you could add a 1x1 ribbing, essentially, front post, back post ribbing. So when everything reaches probably to about, right your ear, maybe just right where like you're opening your ear is, you could go all the way around and work a round of ribbing. So you would do front post, back post, front post, back post, front post, back post. join with the slip stitch when you get to the start, and then, you know, chain or do your post stitches or stacked and do it all again. Do front post, back post right on top of each other, and you get some really simple ribbing. And you guys know how to do that, right? You know how to do that. So the great thing is, this is easy, right? Like, this is so easy. And just by learning this, you know how to do coasters. You can do amigurumi. Those of you who made the confetti dots blanket, you're very familiar with circles and such. But knowing that just getting it to the increase amount and then just working just regular double crochets, that curves the whole piece. And then you make a hat, and then you just have very simple ribbing around the bottom. If you want to, you don't even have to add that. What I like to do is actually add a round of single crochets at the bottom just to bring it all together, and then finish it off, weaving your tails, do a pom-pom, and Bob's your uncle. It's really that easy, you guys. It's such a simple thing. Now, something I do want to point out is that I did include a link to the Chic and Simple Hat. So if you come down here, it's another free pattern. It's the Chic and Simple Hat. Same concept as far as, you know, you work the circumference, you work the same depth, blah, blah, blah. Only this one is worked from the bottom up. So you make that band first, and then you pick up stitches along the band and work from the bottom to go up. So when it's time to shape for the crown, you actually do decreases instead of increases. Now, in knitting, that's very common. We do that a lot, right? In crochet, it's kind of funny. The one I just taught you, the top down, is very common in crochet, which you can tell I'm a knitter and a crocheter because a lot of the times I do my crochet hats from the bottom up. Like this hat I showed you guys, like, it's from the bottom up. Like, and this one is super big. Like, this is way beyond like 9.5 inches, right? It's a slouchy hat. It has what's called a reverse single crochet ribbing around it. Like, this is a really big, slouchy, fun hat, right? But I make a lot of my hats from the bottom up, and I wonder if that's because of my knitting background. Even though I learned to crochet first, I didn't make crochet hats until I had made a knit hat. I kind of went like weird in some ways. Oh, Breezy's, what's going on, baby?
Sorry about that.
No, you're fine. We're just going over there. There she goes. Okay, my mom like coming in hot behind me, you guys. So anyways, I like to go from the bottom up. What I really like most about the Chic and Simple Perfect hat, by the way, guys, that was my son, who is now 18 when he was 15. And it's so weird to see how much he's grown. But this hat, what you will notice is, again, there is the chart. Like, I brought that same chart over here. There it is on me. I brought this same chart over here. If I get down to it, oh my gosh, it's a lot here. Oh, where did it go? Oh, okay. We have a... There's two. So here's the actual pattern. That one was to the page, so you have to click to get the pattern. So here's the pattern. Jeez Louise. When you come down to it, here's the difficulty level. It's super easy. It used Red Heart Chic Sheep, so you could use just about any yarn. Here's the same chart you were just looking at, right? The same chart of all the sizes. This one used 16 stitches per inch. You can, all the notes, you can follow along with that, no problem. But right here, you will chain 11 stitches, single crochet in the second chain from hook into the end, and then single crochet in the back loop only to the end. So you're going to do single crochet ribbing, back loop only, single crochet ribbing for the band. So my band is 10 stitches wide. You can make it smaller, you can make it bigger, but it's 10 stitches wide, and you make the whole band first, and then you pick up the stitches to go to the top of the hat. I really like making the band first and then working up from there. I love the way it looks. I love the way it feels. I do that for a lot of my crochet hats. It's a preference thing, right? But if you're interested, you could do that. Now, on the opposite end of the spectrum, if you're doing top down, you could always do a join as you go attached brim, which is something we can learn as we as we progress on through our crochet skills, but you can still get this same look of a band as a join as you go for a top down. And that's done quite often. Those of you who did the turkey trot crochet along turkey trot, there was that crocheted ribbing that was attached to the top. It'd be the same idea. But I tend to like the look of the ribbing and then working along from that. But it's pretty easy, guys. Like it's pretty simple stuff. You're going to do single crochets. This one's done with single crochets, and then you work around, and it gets until you get certain sizes that you decrease down in the increments that you need to, and call it a day. Pull it tight, fits really well. It's a very simple single crochet hat. You could absolutely make that out of Super Saver, Swish worsted, which is a really good yarn. If you have Chic Sheep, I love it. It's a great yarn. You can use that. There's lots of options for you. All right. Tammy Scott, I just saw your Instagram post for your new Ruana. It's beautiful. I had that Ruana. Thank you, by the way, Tammy. I had that Ruana made specifically for the stash busting quickies that I did with Moogly. And after that event is done, that whole pattern bundle goes into a vault. And so then we're able to individually sell the patterns. And so that's why I published it. I love that pattern. It's so comfortable, so cozy. I wore it out last night, actually, to dinner. Got a lot of compliments on it. It is made using Chic Sheep. It uses a lot of yarn, but it is so squishy and fun and lovely. I just love it. And if you're not following me on Instagram, I hope you will come join me over there. That is actually why I listed my name as The Marley Bird today, because on Instagram, I am The Marley Bird over there on Instagram. I would love for you to come over and say hello. Don't forget to hashtag all of your projects as you're working along with BiCrafty Bootcamp. Do hashtag BiCrafty Bootcamp, or hashtag Marley Bird, or hashtag Marley Made Me Do It. MMMDI. Marley Made Me Do It. MMMDI. Last but not least, don't forget that the Tournament of Stitches is just around the corner. If you have not had a chance to check out the instructions for that or the details about that, let me add a link to that here. As I come over here and try and grab it in my free time, and I'm just not working very fast here. Tournament of Stitches is for knitters, crocheters, and Tunisian crocheters. So if you are a trifecta, so to speak, if you're a triple threat, come and join in. It is a 5-week knit along, crochet along. You're going to learn lots of different stitches. There's more information about it than what I can put on here. I did a live with the We Crochet crew talking about it. We will do a live over here to tell everybody who is not on Facebook, so that way people can know. But the Tournament of Stitches is going to start March 15th. If you're a crocheter, if you're a BiCrafty Bootcamp, I will tell you, you can absolutely do the Netflix and chill version. You would be stretched a little bit for the smooth jazz version. You'd be stretched a lot for the Be Quiet, I'm Crocheting version, just so that you guys kind of have a heads up. Robin is writing those patterns, and she tends to get very kooky and excited when it comes to the extreme Be Quiet, I'm Crocheting. Like, be ready to try out some fun and funky stuff, because that's just what she does. She loves it. So for the knit version and the crochet version, as I just mentioned, there are concentration levels. You can choose your own adventure and choose which one you want to go and mix and match along the way. For the Tunisian, there's only one version. There's only one pattern. So there is no adventure for the Tunisian. Tunisian alone is its own adventure, but it's just a make along for the Tunisian if you want to come and join that. So I'll be sure to add that to the video description box as well. Let me do that right here before I forget. Tournament of Stitches 2022. And the details are right there. There is a sign up newsletter. You definitely want to sign up to that, because as we're going along, if we're doing just like random prizes, random coupons, random gifts, random stuff, you want to be part of that. That is not the same as the Marley Bird newsletter. That is its own entity. So we have a way to tag if you're signing up as, Tournament of Stitches, and we can send emails out just to the people who signed up for Tournament of Stitches. So you want to make sure that you do sign up to that. even if you are part of the Marley Bird newsletter. All right, that's it for me, everybody. It's been an hour and a half, and it has been a very wonderful hour and a half spending it right here with all of you. We're welcome back to BiCrafty Bootcamp. I would love to see your crochet cows that you finished last week. I'd love to see your hats that you're finishing this week. Next week, we venture into a little bit more instruction, a little bit more detail. We're going to be making a bag next week, and we're going to be using tapestry crochet skills and a stitch that looks very similar to knitting. It's definitely going to be stretching your skills a bit. It's one of those that I want you to be patient with yourself and really work on it. And it might be that we need an extra week between there. We'll play around with it. But I think you're going to love it. So I'm very excited about it. Don't forget, I'm sorry, I almost forgot. Don't forget that BiCrafty Bootcamp is now transitioning to Fridays at, I think it was 11:30 is what we agreed on, Chrissy and I. We put together, I got my track calendar, you guys, and so we put it into my Google Calendar, and we saw that there were a lot of double ups. And so to make sure that I'm 100% here for you when I need to be, we had to move BiCrafty to Fridays. It just worked better. So make sure you guys are aware of that. All right, that's it. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.